When you rank natural resources, few rank higher than water. Water is life. Our very existence depends on clean, drinkable water. Not only do we rely on water for survival, but we also use it to beautify our world and improve our quality of life. But this resource can unknowingly become contaminated needlessly through our everyday activities. Once a water supply is contaminated, it becomes very difficult and at times even impossible to clean it up. That's why the Syst Groundwater Protection Program was developed. The Syst program is a series of self-assessment bulletins and videos intended to protect the groundwater that people use for drinking water. They're designed to help you identify potential sources of contamination and develop methods to best manage any high risk associated with your property. They also address environmental policies, regulations, and recommended procedures known as Best Management Practices, or BMPs. I'm Kirk Cisco, and today I'd like to talk to you about everyday household practices and agricultural activities that can pollute your water supply, how you personally can determine the potential risk of groundwater contamination on your property, and the steps you can take to avoid or reduce these risks. Most of us understand pollution of surface water such as rivers and lakes. This type of pollution is easily recognizable by trash, oil, or other things floating in the water, or by fish kills. Unfortunately, contamination of underground water supplies is not so obvious. For example, did you know that the condition of your well and its proximity to contamination sources like feedlots, animal yards, septic systems, and waste storage areas could be putting your groundwater at risk? Even simple cracks in well casing can allow fertilizers, oil, pesticides, and other contaminants released near the wellhead to easily enter the well. These factors and others contribute to groundwater contamination. Remember, once groundwater is contaminated, it is very difficult and at times impossible to restore it to its original condition. Avoiding contamination is your easiest and safest option. Well age is an important factor in predicting the likelihood of contamination. A well constructed more than 50 years ago is likely to be near the center of the property. Generally, it's a relatively shallow well and is probably surrounded by many potential contamination sources. Older well pumps are more likely to leak lubricating oils. Older wells also are more likely to have thinner casings that are perforated by corrosion. If you have a well that is 30 or 40 years old, you may want to have it inspected by a qualified well driller. Dug wells pose the highest risk of drinking water contamination because they are shallow and often poorly protected from surface water. A dug well has a large diameter hole, usually more than 2 feet wide, which is often constructed by hand. Driven point or sand point wells pose a moderate to high risk for contamination since they're shallow, usually less than 50 feet deep, and can only be installed in loose, sandy soils. Other types of wells, including those constructed by a combination of jetting and driving, are considered drilled wells. These wells are usually 4 to 8 inches in diameter and often exceed depths of 50 feet. The risk of contamination for these wells depends on their location, construction, and management. Shallow wells, wells 50 feet or less, draw from the groundwater nearest the land surface. Surface pollution usually causes the water supply to be contaminated. This process can happen quickly, in weeks, days, or even hours. Areas with thin soils or sands can quickly become contaminated. Dense clay soils will slow the process but will not prevent contamination. Whether it's a shallow or deep well, all old wells should be tested. It's difficult to pinpoint when contamination occurs, but if your water suddenly develops a different taste, odor, color, or clarity, have it tested. Sudden or unexplained illnesses in family, livestock, or neighbors could indicate a well problem and the need to test. Remember, changes in the environment like chemical or petroleum production, animal waste, pesticides, or other activities near your well could mean trouble. The best way to monitor well water quality is by routine testing. Although you can't have water tested for every possible pollutant, some basic tests will help you evaluate overall quality of the water. At a minimum, test water annually for bacteria and nitrates. These are the most common contaminants. In sandy materials or bedrock, test for corrosivity. A good initial test will also include hardness, alkalinity, pH, conductivity, and chloride. If you have lead or copper pipes with soldered copper joints, have your water tested for lead contamination. Test for volatile organic compounds if products containing these compounds are produced, used, or have been spilled nearby. Though expensive, about $80 to $100 per compound testing for pesticide can be justified if these products are used nearby. You can have water tested by both public and private laboratories. A list of certified labs is available from the Texas Natural Resource Conservation Commission or the Texas Agriculture Extension Service Soil and Water Laboratory. Be sure to follow the lab instructions and use only the official container sent to you. Placing water into a non-sterilized bottle could result in inaccurate information. Once the tests are completed, keep them on file. Future tests will help you detect changes in water quality. You should also keep detailed records on water levels, maintenance intervals, and new construction. Old wells without proper casing, sealing, and protective slabs, or with other problems, should be brought up to current standards. You can upgrade your well by getting rid of well pits, installing caps, extending casing, and moving such activities as pesticide mixing, tank rinsing, or gasoline storage farther from your well. Also take precautions against backflow. Backflow or back siphoning occurs when pesticides or other chemicals are allowed to flow back into the well through the water hose. This type of contamination can be avoided by using an inexpensive anti-backflow device. A good rule to follow is to keep all possible contaminants as far away as possible from the well area and avoid spills. Even empty chemical containers or fertilizer and pesticide bags near a wellhead can cause problems. Another, less obvious source of contaminants is animal feeding areas or silos. Wet manure can contaminate a well with bacteria and nitrates. This can be avoided by moving feeding areas at least 250 feet from the wellhead and protecting the manure stacks from rain to prevent leachate from entering the soil. If the silo is too close to your well, you can install a system for collecting rainfall runoff draining from freshly ensiled forage. Concrete curbs can be used to direct livestock yard runoff away from the well. Other management changes you may want to consider include moving traffic areas away from the well and upgrading or managing the septic system. It's estimated that thousands of unused or abandoned wells are scattered throughout Texas. Many of these wells are improperly plugged, creating safety hazards for small children, animals, and the water supply. An improperly sealed well allows animal waste, chemical runoff, and other pollutants to enter with little or no filtration. This untreated waste can contaminate one or more aquifers, making the water supply for miles around unsafe to drink. The Texas Water Code provides guidelines for properly plugging abandoned wells. For specific requirements, consult the Texas Natural Resource Conservation Commission Well Abandonment Brochure. Proper well closing takes time and